Hello guys, in this video we will be going through the conflict between the various macroeconomic objectives and the policies that the government can adopt to achieve low inflation. In the last video, we had asked ourselves what exactly is the conflict between achieving high economic growth and low inflation. Hence, we will address this conflict in the next few slides. Firstly, we will take a look at the aspect to achieve a higher economic growth. In order to achieve higher economic growth, there is a need to increase aggregate demand, which comprises of consumption, investment, government expenditure, and net exports, which in turn will help to increase national income via a multiplier effect. However, we know that with an increase in AD, it would definitely cause an increase in general price level, which is a form of demand pull inflation, leading to high inflation. So, with this conflict, how does the government still achieve both high economic growth and low inflation? Well, in order to do so, the government can actually adopt supply-side policy. Supply-side policy has two aspects to it. The first type of supply-side policy is to expand the productive capacity of economy and is a long-run supply-side policy. On the other hand, there is also the short-run supply-side policy which targets at lowering the cost of production. This would mean a lower inflation rate overall, as an increase in productive capacity will lead to a rightward shift in aggregate supply curve, lowering general price level. In addition, when cost of production is lowered, it will also shift down the aggregate supply curve, which once again lower general price level. A fall in cost of production will then be reflected with a downward shift of the aggregate supply curve from AS0 to AS1. On the other hand, an increase in productive capacity of the economy will be reflected by a rightward shift in the AS curve from AS0 to AS1. With this, let us now take a look at how the government can further achieve low inflation. This can be done through the fiscal policy, monetary policy, supply-side policy, and lastly, exchange rate policy. We will take a look at the implementation of a contractionary fiscal policy. So, in this case, in order to bring down inflation, fiscal policy must be contractionary. This means that government expenditure have to be reduced and direct taxes like income tax and corporate tax will now have to be increased. All this will then help to lower aggregate demand as both consumption and investment falls. With falling aggregate demand, it will thus help to lower demand pull inflation. With regards to monetary policy, it also has to be contractionary. This means that we now have to lower money supply, which in turn increases interest rate. As interest rate increases, it now means that cost of borrowing increase, which reduces consumers' incentive to consume and investors' incentive to invest. All this will once again lead to a fall in consumption and investment and help to lower the aggregate demand, which in turn lowers demand pull inflation. This can be reflected by a diagram with a fall in aggregate demand from AD0 to AD1, which lowers the general price level from P0 to P1. However, there are various limitations to contractionary fiscal policy. For example, when government wants to reduce public spending on healthcare and education, it will likely be met with much public resistance. In addition, when there's already high inflation and government still increase taxes, it may lead to a public protest. More importantly, when AD falls too much, it might lead to a contraction of the economy, which results in either slower economic growth or recession. When government wants to implement the contractionary fiscal policy, there will also be time lags involved. There are also various limitations towards contractionary monetary policy. Firstly, when investments and consumption are interest inelastic, it means that investment and consumption will not likely to respond to any changes in interest rate. As a result, a rise in interest rate may be insufficient to curb consumption and investment. In addition, if the economic outlook is good, it may lead to both investors and consumers being insensitive to interest rates. As a result, a fall in interest rates will not lead to a fall in consumption and investment, limiting the effectiveness of monetary policy. Another policy that the government can adopt is supply-side policy. Short-run supply policy will be aimed at reducing the cost of production. For example, the government can impose price controls on basic necessities like food, fuel, and utilities. In addition, there can also be wage control as labor costs tend to form the largest portion of the total cost for many firms. On the other hand, long-run supply-side policy will be aimed at increasing the productive capacity of the economy. This includes giving incentives for firms to engage in research and development. For example, using technology to develop high-yield crops that require less land or finding alternative energy sources. As resources are also slowly depleting, we can also engage in public education to educate the public to conserve energy and water resources. However, there are still various limitations towards supply-side policy as well. Suppose if there's now a price ceiling, it can result in a shortage of goods which cause the emergence of black market. In addition, when wage increase is limited, it will result in massive labor unrest when the trade unions are strong. With regards to the long-run supply-side policy, when firms engage in research and development, they will incur a large expenditure and that it does not guarantee success or results. Public education will also take a long time as it requires a change in people's mindset. With this, let us take a look at the last policy, which is the exchange rate policy. When countries are small and open, the ability to control money supply is limited as it is influenced by not only trade flows but also international capital flow. In addition, due to the small size of economic and openness, this country tends to behave like an interest rate taker in the global financial market. As a result, they have no ability to control their own interest rate, rendering monetary policy to be ineffective. One such example of this country is Singapore. In the case of Singapore, the main cause of inflation is imported inflation. This is because we are a small country without any natural resources. As a result, we are heavily dependent on imports. We are also very export-driven, which suggests that our net exports takes up a very large proportion of our GDP. Hence, with an appreciation of domestic currency, it will lead to an increase in export prices and a fall in import prices. The exchange rate policy that Singapore adopts is the gradual and modest appreciation of Singapore dollars. Hence, imported prices will now be lowered, which helps to alleviate imported inflation. Cost of production will also be lowered due to high import content, lowering cost-push inflation. With the appreciation of Singapore dollar, the cost of production will now fall for exports which depend on imports as their main factors of production. However, on the other hand, for export sectors with low import content, for example tourism, a rise in SGD will now mean that the export prices are now more expensive in terms of foreign currency. Assuming that demand for exports is price elastic, an increase in price of exports will now lead to a more than proportional fall in exports. This may lead to a slower economic growth and balance of trade will now worsen as net export falls. In conclusion, there are many policies that can be used to achieve low inflation. However, in order for the policy to be effective, we have to take a look at the current economic conditions and the cause of inflation. To sum it off, suppose if economy is plagued by demand pull inflation and is overheating due to excessive demand, government can consider adopting contractionary fiscal or monetary policy. However, if inflation is due to high cost of production and that wages are rising faster than efficiency, then government should adopt supply-side policies. For countries that are small and open and depend a lot on imported goods, government can then use exchange rate policy to lower the imported inflation. With this, I end off by saying a great thank you to you. I hope that you'll find the 3 videos that talks about inflation useful for your upcoming revision. With this, have a great day.